Jerry, just give me your reaction to what's been going on tonight. It is very tense here.
Well, just let me say, and I said it earlier on, the difficulty here is that the Orange Order, when it had a chance to show leadership, instead called people out onto the street. What we could have had here was the parade. There's 10 miles of a parade. It wasn't allowed to come up here. They could have stopped there, they could have went home, but instead the Orange Order, adhering to the determination, they've called loads of people out onto the street, and by doing that they've increased tension. They have caused violence. They can't walk away from it and say that they didn't cause the violence. In terms of the people who are standing here, most of them are here just to see what's happening. They all know that there's not going to be a parade here, and at some stage everybody will go home. But the story is not really here. The story is in what the Orange men did, what they should have done and what they failed to do. They didn't show the leadership. When we met with them last weekend, before the determination came out, they said they would call for a peaceful 12th and a peaceful summer. They then acted absolutely in the opposite direction. Their leadership was to bring people on the street, was to get people hurt, was to get police officers hurt, and they need to stand over that decision. In fact, they need to pull away from that decision.
Nigel Dodds of the DUP, I had a word with him there not long ago. He said that this was almost inevitable. This violence was almost inevitable given the Parades Commission decision. What do you make of that?
Well, violence is never inevitable, and let me say this, because some of the unionists and Orange men were saying this beforehand. The mere fact that they themselves were saying things like violence was going to be inevitable, they fed into that tension. What they should have been saying is that there should have been no extra protests. Any protest clearly is illegal. We've already had 500 parades here today. This is a small section but very large parade. There was a determination given on it. We have 3,600 of these parades every year. If they had sense, if they really wanted an Orange Fest, then they would not have any contentious parades at all. But at the base of this, as soon as we possibly can, we should be back in the talks. We should be looking for a resolution so we don't have to face this year in and year out.
Somebody get him fucking down.
Hey, what's
Tuesday, the Assembly is to be recalled. The issue parading. How does this affect that?
Well, the unions will come and say what the unions will say. I will certainly go and defend the nationalist position here. They are saying continually that this has caused damage to inter-community relationships. Well, let me say this. For 15 years or more, the actual parades have been causing damage to community relations. And it's nearly as if they want to ignore all of that. We wouldn't be here except for the parades. People should be able to get on with their life every single year, and every single year at this time we have this type of scenario. The people in Ardoyne, in Mountain View, in the Dales and in other places here want to get on with their lives. You know, there's 10 miles of a parade. Why do they need an extra 300 yards just to annoy their nationalist neighbours?
Well, I think last night was a terrible night. I think some of the scenes that we witnessed were shocking. And to quote the words of Matt Baggett, the Chief Constable, they were certainly shameful and disgraceful, with 32 police officers injured, some of them with head injuries, possibly about 3 broken legs. A policewoman with 2 children brought to hospital. And of course, the community in general, but not just this community, effectively terrorised. Not just here, the events at Kerrykill and the Short Strand. where quite clearly Parades Commission determinations were broken, show that there was a strategy in place to do just that. And I think that was well flagged up by the leadership of the Orange Order prior to those events actually taking place. So I think it was a bad night. I hope now, in the cold light of day, that common sense will prevail, that people will recognise that we have to find solutions to all of these situations. And I want to address one very important point, which is constantly repeated by people within the leadership of the Orange Order, about their culture being under attack, or there being a cultural war against them. Yesterday in my city, thousands and thousands of Orange men and women marched, and it was a totally peaceful occasion. And that came about because myself and others, many years ago, 10 years ago, decided that we wanted to resolve the issue of parades in our city. And we did so in a way that saw communities come into a room together with the loyal orders, the business community and so forth, with our full support, to seek solutions and find solutions. And our city has been trouble-free for the last 8 years. And again, against the backdrop of all of this, totally peaceful yesterday. If there was a cultural war being waged against the Orange Order, we could have stopped the Orange Order marching in Derry City 10 years ago. Didn't want to do that. We believe they have a right to march. We believe that the apprentice boys have a right to march. And that came about as a result of being able to agree how that would be done, so that offence would not be caused to anyone. And so they had a totally trouble-free day in the city yesterday. Therein lies the solution. And I want to quote James Hetherington, the Grand Master of the Orange Order in my city. Well, to quote him yesterday, he said, Londonderry men, I'm sorry about being sexist about this, but it's his comments, Londonderry men and Derry men can sit down and talk about these things. That's what needs to happen in Belfast. And people can't use the argument that the Orange Order did sit down last weekend. The solution in Derry only came about after months and months of dialogue and discussion. And that's what needs to happen here. So leadership needs to be given by politicians. It needs to be given by the leadership of the Orange Order. And some of the absolutely blood-curdling remarks that were made over the course of the last 24 hours need now to be seen against the backdrop of contributing to the violence that we saw here last night in Belfast.
But you must have a view of who was responsible for last night.
It's quite clear who was responsible for last night. In my opinion, the leadership of the Orange Order failed the Orange Order, and they failed these communities, and they led people up to the top of the hill, and they, as a result of all of that, saw the people that they represent rioting, been involved in violence of the worst kind, damaging the police service that we all have given our allegiance to as a result of the agreements that we've made, with a number of police officers now hospitalised as a result of these attacks. So, quite clearly the decision announced some hours ago that they're suspending their protest, in my opinion, was a massive admission by themselves that they were culpable for what happened here last night. I'm in a place where leadership was given by people like Jerry Kelly, Carol Cullen, other representatives of my party, of whom I'm very proud, and the way in which the community that supports us responded to that and recognised the importance of not becoming embroiled in the effort to draw them into a situation which would have been much worse if that had have happened. Quite clearly, huge leadership was given. I have to say, we need to see that reciprocated within unionism and within loyalism and within Orangeism. There needs to be a recognition that if we are to move forward and resolve these problems, it has to be done in a way that brings people into a room, showing respect, being dignified, and working out solutions. And I again point to what happened in my city as a template for moving forward. People who ignore that are putting their head in the sand and condemning communities such as these to more years of conflict and abuse every time July comes around.
You must have